So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose love stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say doth that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
You may be seated. Now it's my honor to introduce today's speaker for this Memorial Day celebration. Principal Chief Hoskin Jr. has led the Cherokee Nation as the Principal Chief since 2007. Before that, he was actually Secretary of State for the Cherokee Nation, also Deputy Speaker at the Cherokee Nation Council. Under his leadership, they have raised the minimum wages of all the Cherokee Nation businesses and the Cherokee Nation itself. He's also been very instrumental in providing housing for his people, as well as the first to institute more funding for behavioral health. And he's also, as his wife January, have also made it instrumental that women's voices be heard throughout the Cherokee Nation. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr.
What up, Pastor? OCO, everyone. I want to recognize Councilor Clifton Hughes and Council Lady Kendra McGady, who joined us today from the Cherokee Nation. Thank you all for joining us. I should like to begin by noting that all of the men and women who have served the country, who called this community home, particularly those who died in the service to this country, surely believed that they would come back home to this community and see wonderful days ahead. And I will say this, as someone who is not from Langley, but who has passed through this community many times as a young person growing up with Anita, and of course since I've been the Principal Chief, this Veterans Memorial and that park is something that I know every one of them would be proud of, and you all should be proud of the efforts that's going on in this community. In the history of the country, there have been approximately 1,060,000 men and women who've died in military service to this country. That dates back to the dawn of the country. We're nearing the 250th birthday of our country. That includes, if we were to be more specific on that number, that includes 13 people who've died in the war in Iran. That's a large number, except that it is a small fraction of the entire population of the United States since the beginning of this country. A relatively small number of people have given, as Lincoln said, that last measure of devotion to the country. I think of that sacrifice from a Cherokee perspective, and I view it through the lens of my own family. My third great-grandfather was a soldier in the Indian Home Guard, fighting on the side of the Union in the Civil War. And he was wounded but made it through. In World War I, my great uncle, Ned Hoskin Jr., died in France, buried there briefly, and reinterred in Veneta not too long after he was felled in that conflict. When I think about that period of time, it is remarkable to me that Cherokees have fought alongside the United States or as citizens of the United States in just about every conflict, really every conflict, going back to the United States Civil War, and even prior to that, some level of engagement with the United States. And particularly in the Civil War, but also in World War I, where Ned Hoskin Jr. was killed, we have to remember that was within living memory. That was within living memory of the United States doing some harm to the Cherokee Nation, engaging in conduct through its federal Indian policy, which were dark chapters in the history of this country. And yet, Cherokees rushed in to serve in those generations. Think about World War I. It was within the living memory of Ned Hoskin Jr. that the United States had broken some sacred promises to the Cherokee Nation and imposed the state of Oklahoma over our tribal lands. And yet, people in his generation were rushing in defense of liberty. And that was what was at stake in all of the conflicts that the United States has engaged in, but particularly World War I, the spread of imperialism, the crushing of democratic governments, the crushing of freedom was at stake, and people like Ned Hoskin Jr. rushed towards that, not away from it. And I think the motivation was that he and his fellow Cherokees who served believed in the promise of America, believed what America stood for, that universal idea that people ought to be free. We ought to have the freedom to assemble, the freedom to speak, the freedom to organize our own democratic governments, to chart our own course and not have it dictated by someone on high who was simply appointed or took their position by force. And that was what motivated Cherokees, even in those days where they could look back and see some great difficulties imposed by the United States. And that moves me a great deal to think about the patriotism of the Cherokee people. The fact that Cherokees and Native Americans have served this country in numbers disproportionate to our population, in greater numbers than our population, says something, I think, about the Cherokee people of the Cherokee Nation and Native Americans across the country. So that's why I don't miss an opportunity when I am invited to share some words about celebrating what it means to serve this country and memorializing, as we are today, those who died for this country. So that number, as I say, 1,060,000, is a small number that gave us all so much. Now, sending people to war, to fight and to die, or potentially die, is not, of course, something unique in all of human history, and in fact is the norm through human history. What is rare through all of human history is that people were sent to fight and potentially die by a democracy in defense of democracy. That is very rare, actually, in the history of the world. History records more dictators and despots and kings than it records free democratic governments. Democracy is rare, and democracy is always fragile. And it always depends on service. And the service that those who we're memorializing today, those who would go serve the country, would put their lives on the line, as every person who served did, and those who would give their life in defense of democracy and freedom, did something that is of immeasurable value to the rest of us, that we can never repay. At the Cherokee Nation, we try every day to honor veterans, and particularly honor those who have fallen. We try to make sure that there's programs and services for those who became veterans, those who made it through. We try to provide care to the families those who were serving and those who are veterans. But to those who have passed on, those who died in service of this country, there is nothing material that we can do for them. They have passed on. We can certainly support their families. But there is one thing that we can do. We can think about what their sacrifice was, how rare it is in the history of the world that they would go fight and die at the direction of a democratically elected free government to push back on things like imperialism in World War I, fascism in World War II, the spread of communism throughout much of the 20th century, defending this country against terrorism and other conflicts. We think about the fact that they gave their lives for that, then the question is, what do the rest of us do that are living, that are enjoying the blessings of of liberty? And what we must do is we must exercise our right as citizens. We must make sure that what they suffered through and what took their lives was not in vain. We must today stand up against fascism. We must today recognize that this country, a great democracy, was not a democracy guaranteed by that loss of life, but it was secured by it. It's up to the rest of us to make use of it, to have a vibrant democracy, to participate, to speak out, to make sure that this continues to be a government of laws and not men, to make sure that this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. What those who died, sacrificed, is so much bigger than the bare minimum that all of us have to do, and that is to cherish freedom. Now, we're doing it today in Langley. Think about what we've done so far. We've assembled here as free people. We've spoke out. We've exercised our faith. We've saluted the flag. We are using the freedoms that was secured by those who were cut down, like Ned Hoskins Jr. We have to make sure, though, that it's not just this day of the year that we do it. We have to make sure that it's not just on the holidays related to the veterans, although they deserve our reverence. We have to make sure that every day we're remembering those who were cut down, those who died in defense of liberty, and we have to use that liberty and we have to raise it up. And I want to tell you today in Langley, we are raising it up, and that's why I'm so proud to be here with the fine citizens of Langley. Thank you all very much. Whatever.